The Catherine Liu.
I have serious TMJ. If I'm like this, it's not because I got punched. It's because I actually have a serious jaw thing. Anyway, good to see you, Jason.
It's very good to see you. Thank you so much, Dr. Liu, for taking the time to join us today. Now, this is a topic that you and another member of the show, Mean Jean Bajlan, feel very strongly about. Why do you have a problem with DII?
Why do I have a problem? Okay, that's hilarious. But first, I want to give a shout out to my friend Jennifer Pan, who's writing a book on this topic. So we're all going to be looking forward to that. But since Jason and I are BIPOC and we care about inequality, it would seem that the industrialization of diversity, equity, inclusion is like a slap in the face of every leftist worth their salt. But people go along to get along, and there are very few people who are willing to publicly speak out against it. But I'm going to give you a little bit of history about how I've experienced it as an employee, as a worker, right? So I come into the university like 30 years ago at graduate school. I'm like the only Asian American woman for miles around, not in an Asian American studies program. And things are, I get hired in my first job. I refuse to do Asian American studies. I do what I do. I get a PhD in French. My first job, I actually get hate mail from what I think is an older professor who knows my file and accuses me of being an imposter and a sham. And because I got like multicultural grants, because in the 90s,
You got Claudine Gade a little bit?
What?
You got Claudine Gade a little bit?
I don't pretend to be as fantastic as she is. No, I was just this little assistant professor and an older white guy professor who I slipped a piece of hate mail under the door when I got tenure. And, when I was talking to a lot of women and people of color in academia, including Touré Reed, we found that we all had similar experiences. Like in the 90s was under Clinton, 90s, early 2000s. And there was this top-down imposition of multiculturalism at that time. And people were really mad about political correctness and stuff like that. And people like Touré and I are just coming up in the world. We want to get our work done. And we have these experiences, they're fairly unorganized. But in the 2000s, when I moved to UC, we started to have to do sexual violence and sexual harassment training, SVSH, because California has very, very strong Title IX rules for its universities, and Title IX is the federal law that was passed in the early 70s to outline sex discrimination from any university or institution that took federal money. And in those early days, like the sexual violence and sexual harassment training prevention program, that's a mouthful, was done by like employees in our Office of Equal Opportunity. I remember the woman coming, giving us lectures, and that was its earliest iteration. I just did one like a month ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It took 3 hours, and what I found, and it was online. A lot of this stuff moved online, as you recall, because of the pandemic, but also because people couldn't handle, the Office of Equal Opportunity couldn't actually handle the workload anymore, as diversity, equity, and inclusion was included under sexual violence, sexual harassment prevention training. And what used to be this kind of like homemade training that an administrator would do for the faculty is now farmed out to a company called Vector Solutions for the UC. Now, I didn't have time because I just finished this training and Jason and I started talking about this. I didn't have time to do the deep dig, and I don't think the UC would let me know. I want to know
Mhm.
how much my employer is paying this company,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
based in Ohio, Vector Solutions, to do this elaborate, very corporate, I mean, I'm not even gonna say like basic corporate training program to prevent um, discrimination. So it's now called like anti-discrimination prevention and discrimination, anti-sexual violence, sexual harassment prevention program. And it took 3 hours. And if you try to speed through it, they'll like ding you and then you have to start
Oh,
over.
so you can't, like, fast forward the video to
No,
be like, "Hey, you don't know." Oh,
no.
wow.
And
Okay.
this is the first time I've taken it in this vector solutions format. So I
Mm,
started looking up vector solutions.
mhm,
Vector Solutions is a company based in Ohio. So you're like, oh, yeah, that's good. No, it was backed by a private equity company called Golden Gate Capital, which is
mhm,
based in San Francisco. And I started thinking, like, they're based in San Francisco. They're probably like donors to the UC. There's probably some like serious skullduggery going on there. But one of the things I've discovered in my old age is that one way to make money, if you're a VC or if you're a private company, is just like latch yourself onto the public teat. We have this public university that has, billions of dollars of a budget. We have federal regulations to come down that we have to abide by. And VC, venture capital, and private
mhm,
equity find that need, find that
mhm,
niche,
mhm.
they make money. Like, you think they're all creative, innovative? No,
Yep.
they're parasites. So Golden Gate Capital, sponsors this company that does these pretty bland trainings that are very tech because you used to be able to fast forward through them. Now
Right.
you can't. And they have these like little videos of real people with scenarios that you're supposed to watch. Um, and then they ask you questions in their lessons, and you download like federal laws. If I'm going to read federal law in the middle of one of these things, and then I saw that they had recently been bought out by another private equity company called Genstar Capital and Insights Capital.
Mhm,
And these are all private equity companies based in San Francisco. So whether or not Vector Solutions makes any money from having glommed onto the public teat, venture capital has already like made bankers and the lawyers a lot of money, and the original investors in Golden Gate Capital made a lot of money because they sold their company to another private equity company. So this is making your mind spin.
mhm,
It's just that this is how contemporary capitalism is working now. And I don't want, like, the university has prestige, it has a brand name, UC, right?
mhm,
And we're the workers who work. We're not in a factory. It's not like pure Marxism where we're producing products or values, but let's say we're providing services, which is a top flight education, right?
mhm,
And it used to be that the state of California would fund most of the operating budget of the University of California. That all went down. They started going down the drain in the 70s when Ronald Reagan,
the governor.
60s, late
Yep,
60s,
yep,
up to early 70s when Ronald Reagan became governor, and he said, "Oh, you little fucking ingrates, you're all
mhm,
like protesting the war. I'm going to introduce this thing called student fees." And the student fees have just gone up and up and up. And we now we take a lot of out of state students who pay full tuition, the amount, like the UC was a private university. It's still a great deal for Californians if your kids can get in. It's harder and harder to get in because we want the full fee paying students. So then the UC, like, spokespeople will say to you, but we we give Pell Grants and scholarships to the most needy to the most needy Californians. They can pay down to zero. It's the middle class and the international and out-of-state students who subsidize this, and it's really great. So you think about that for a moment. These kids who are on full scholarship are getting Pell Grants from the government, which comes into the UC operating budget. Everyone's tuition dollars gets mixed up, and some of it is going right to private equity in the form of more and more farmed out activities, like the building of our dorms is now built by for-profit company based in Texas called American Campus Communities. I don't have time to do all this research because I'm writing a book, but you just scratch the surface, and the UC is a behemoth with private equity incrustations all over it, sucking it dry. And DEI is one of these functions that became really, really like that got a lot of liberals very excited and exercised because of Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown, because of finally George Floyd, and the administrators. We have an African American chancellor. They were very, very eager to show that the UC was like on board with creating racial justice. So rather than do anything redistributive, we actually invited private equity to encrust itself more deeply in the activities of the university, to suck money out of the university, to give us this kind of like training. And now you can ask, is the upper administration now more diverse? Is the faculty more diverse?
You're there.
And there are efforts, and yes, in some ways that has worked out. Most of the faculty in the humanities, Jason and I are going to talk about this someday, who have been newly hired are women of color. And that has changed. If you look up at the upper echelon of our rulers and bosses, that has not changed. That's all these white guys. But more deeply disturbing than that, because we have an African American chancellor, is this money suck that's taking tuition dollars, federal grant dollars, tuition dollars from in-state, out-of-state students, student loans, and sucking it out of the university right into the pockets of private equity. So the workers who produce value in the UC are people who actually teach the students, who clean the facilities, who run the facilities, who provide the services on all of these different levels. And they're unionizing. I mean, there's more labor action. The faculty, maybe not so much. But if you think of the UC as a factory, then you have more and more foremen watching over the workers and extracting value from them and paying private equity. This has been the brilliant formula for capitalism under the neoliberal regime, under the period of austerity. I don't even know, like, people say it's not neoliberal anymore, it's neo-feudal. I just say, like, it's capitalism. And it's very hard for people to focus on this kind of stuff because we've been so schooled in identitarianism, and we're like, oh, I want to be recognized. Oh, I don't feel good. I feel offended. Well, you know what really offends me? Fucking private equity in my house.
But